Welcome, everyone. My name is Helen Sui, and I represent the Work That Reconnects network. We thank you for joining us for the Webinars and Conversation Cafe program. We provide a wide range of rich educational and supportive online events for our global WTR community. Our intention is to strengthen the web of the community while reaching beyond its current edges to weave deeper connections with people who are contributing to the great turning in diverse and complementary ways. And today, we are excited to continue the three-part series of webinars with Kathleen. Kathleen will be guiding us in a rich exploration of the skills and understandings necessary for facilitating effective and meaningful WTR rituals. And today we'll be focusing on explorations on the Truth Mandala practice. Kathleen is an experienced WTR facilitator and mentor, a shamanic practitioner, and an author. She's also one of the volunteer weavers for the WTR network. And now I'm delighted to hand it over to Kathleen.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm so grateful to have you all here. This is a teaching webinar. So we are going to be spending time helping you as facilitators and emerging facilitators to gain knowledge, experience, and some guidance for how best or how are effective ways of holding this ritual in a workshop space. So, and we are going to experience the ritual itself, but it's going to be in a shorter version than we might do in a workshop. Okay, because we're again, this is primarily a teaching and supporting space. We want to have time also at the end for question and answers. So the pace of today, this evening, today, wherever you're coming in from, will be a very short talking about the different steps of the ritual that we want to pay attention to. Then we're going to go specifically into the Truth Mandala, doing some teaching about the power of honoring our pain, then going into the very specifics of how we set up this ritual, how we hold the container, how we prepare ourselves for it, and prepare our participants for it. Then we will experience the ritual in a shortened version and then have time for Q&A, reflections, and sharings as well. So to help me know a little bit more about your experience of the Truth Mandala, I'd like for us to take just this is a short 3-question poll. So if you would please answer these 3 questions, and so I can get a sense of your experience, would be really helpful. But also, Helen, while at some point here, maybe after the grounding, if you could give the instructions for people on how to rename themselves based on their experience, would be great. Well, let's just take a look here. So I'm going to share the results with everyone. So I can just see here. So 28 of you have experienced it in person, online, both. Okay, and over half of you have never experienced this ritual. Okay, that's really helpful to know. Okay, most of you have not facilitated this before. Great. And all right, and so a few of you have seen the 7th generation webinar and most have not. Wonderful. All right, thank you. This is very helpful. As with any ritual experience, it's really helpful to ground ourselves, bring ourselves present into this space. So I invite you to get comfortable in your seat, standing wherever you are, and bring your awareness to your breath. Be aware of yourself in the space you're in. Grateful for this technology that lets us connect over these many miles and countries all across this beautiful planet. But knowing that wherever we are, we can root ourselves in the soil and the earth beneath our feet. And so as you are aware of your place, bringing into your awareness on honoring all the ancestors of your land and honoring all the present day beings that share that land with you. Honor the ones who will come after you on this land. And letting yourselves root in the place you are in. Imagine that your energy can move out through the bottoms of your feet like roots of a tree. And let that energy dance down through the soil, the clay, the bedrock, rooting you in earth. And just like a tree, you can absorb the blessings of earth. Imagine it as a warm red light, filling you with unconditional love and acceptance for who you are. Filling you with creativity and abundance and all the blessings of sanctuary. We are beings of earth and we are beings of sky. So imagine now that you can invite your energy to move up through the crown of your head like branches of that tree, reaching high into the heavens. From there, breathing in the breath of life, the oxygen that kisses every cell awake. Breathe in the blue light blessings of vision and clarity, expansion, possibility. Breathe in mystery and protection. And now bring your awareness to your heart. And through your heart, be aware of your connection, like you've stepped into a spider web of connection to all life, to everyone here on this webinar, everyone around you, all the beings of this beautiful planet, knowing that we are connected to all life, and all life, all things on this planet are connected to us. And it's in this knowing of our interconnectedness where we find the power to be able to be in the honoring of our pain, our personal pain and our pain for the world. So as you hold and be held in that space of interconnectedness, I invite you to hear the words of Amanda Gorman in this beautiful poem, Hymn for the Hurting. Everything hurts. Our hearts shadowed and strange, minds made muddied and mute. We carry tragedy, terrifying and true, and yet none of it is new. We knew it as home, as horror, as heritage. Even our children cannot be children, cannot be. Everything hurts. It's a hard time to be alive and even harder to stay that way. We're burdened to live out these days while at the same time blessed to outlive them. This alarm is how we know we must be altered, that we must differ or die, that we must triumph or try. Thus, while hate cannot be terminated, it can be transformed into a love that lets us live. May we not just grieve, but give. May we not just ache, but act. May our signed right to bear arms never blind our sight from shared harm. May we choose our children over chaos. May another innocent never be lost. Maybe everything hurts, our hearts shadowed and strange, but only when everything hurts may everything change. And then take one more breath and let yourself come back into our space here today. So let us begin by going over the basic steps of any ritual that we may be working with here. And there will be notes. I did a webinar on more in depth on the steps of ritual that is available to you, that will be in a follow-up email for more information on this. So every ritual, there is the context for the ritual, why we're doing it. What is the information that people need to know ahead of time to be able to put the ritual, have the ritual make sense, or understand why we are doing what we're doing. And then there is the intention of the ritual. Where are we trying to take people? What is the experience that this ritual is inviting us into? Ritual by nature is creating a space for us to move outside of what we would call ordinary reality or ordinary time, to have a richer, deeper experience of something, to be transformed, to be changed. And so we want to be really clear with ourselves and with the people that we're sharing this with. What is the intention of this ritual? What are we inviting you into? And make that really clear for people. Then every ritual has its instruction. How are people to act? What are the steps that we're going to take? What is welcomed? What is not welcomed? We want to give all of the instruction as clearly as possible before going into the ritual space. We want people to be as clear as possible about what's expected of them and how to do certain things that we're asking them, so that they can step fully into the ritual with some confidence that they understand what's happening. So we provide instruction, make sure we ask for questions, get everything straight before we make this shift. Then it's really important that we have a way that we move from this ordinary time and space into the ritual. So there is a bringing people in to the ritual space, and every ritual, this will be different. But it's important that we as facilitators fully own, fully embody the intention, the whatever we're asking people to do in this ritual. We have to be fully willing to do as well, and to hold that reality of the power of the ritual. It's all kind of in your attitude about bringing people into the ritual and having there be a beginning to it. Then there's the ritual itself. And what's important as a facilitator here, and particularly important in the Truth Mandala, so we'll be spending a lot of time on this piece, is maintaining the container. Right? So in all the instruction, it was to be able to create a safe container for whatever transformation is about to happen. And we as facilitators need to be able to maintain the integrity of that container, making sure that what the instructions that we've given are being followed, so that people have a sense of safety and agreement as to how things will be moving forward. So we'll be talking specifically about this in greater detail. Then once the ceremony or the ritual is coming to a conclusion, there is an official way that you want to end the ritual. And often it's the same, in a similar way as you've started it, to be able to signal we are now finished with this ritual. And then there's this transition place from we've been in ritual space, we're coming back into the workshop, And we want to be able to have some space for people to either have reflections about the ritual or to be able to make some kind of transition, effective transition to process and or to be with what's happened in the ritual. And so again, here today, we're going to experience a transition practice that I've created called What Has Been Strengthened in Me, that I find has been a really helpful way of transitioning out of the Truth Mandala. So let us focus in now on the Truth Mandala. This is one of the beloved and probably one of the more widely used rituals in the Work That Reconnects process. It is not the original Honoring Our Pain ritual when Joanna and others brought this work forward in 1983. Back then, the ritual that was used most was called the despair ritual, which is quite a complex ceremony. I've facilitated it once. It's very powerful. It's worth looking up and coming back to life. Many moving parts and pretty profound. The Truth Mandala actually was created in a workshop in Germany on the fly. Joanna was there in 1990 in West Germany at the time that reunification of West and East Germany was happening. She was teaching an intensive. And on the day that this was happening, she came into the space. There was so much tension and so much emotion about what was about this reunification that she realized that they needed some sort of space for being able to share their experience. And so the Truth Mandala was something that was created in response to that need. I'm sure it's been tweaked a little bit since then, but this shows some of the power of this process and the creativity needed sometimes in the moment to say what's needed. And so the Truth Mandala was born from that need. With this particular ritual, three things I think are really important for us as facilitators and emerging facilitators. The first is to realize we need to prepare ourselves. We need to have done and be doing our own emotional work, to be in tune with our own feelings, to be comfortable sharing our feelings and being present while others are sharing their feelings. So this is always ongoing work, but it's really important that we do our own work to get to be as in tune with and be able to be as present with other people's emotions and our own emotions. Holding and creating a strong container for this ritual is essential. And then thinking through how you're going to transition people out of the ritual afterwards. So again, these are things we're going to be focusing on in our teaching part of things today. We want, though, first to be able to provide people with a context for this ritual, for the reason that we're doing this ritual, the power of honoring our pain, somewhere in your workshop experience. So I'd like to share with you a teaching about honoring our pain that I use in my online work to help us all get on the same page as far as what we mean by honoring our pain. Zen poet Thich Nhat Hanh was once asked, "What do we need to do to save the world?" He replied, "What we most need to do is to hear within us the sounds of the earth crying." And to do this, we first need to allow ourselves to feel our own feelings about the problems in the world, the problems we're all facing, our feelings of anger, fear, grief, and hopelessness. We all have these feelings from time to time, sometimes every day, sometimes every hour. And what we need to embrace is this, that it's perfectly normal, healthy, and imperative that we have these feelings. Our pain for the world is not a problem or a neurosis. It's actually part of our coping mechanisms, and it's also part of the solution to the problems that we're concerned about. We feel pain when we put our hand too close to a flame. That pain tells us to pull our hand away before it gets burned. That physical pain serves a purpose, and we're grateful for it. Emotional pain works the same way. It gives us information about a situation so that we can know how to respond. They let us know when something is not working, is not healthy, or is not safe. But if we shut down our emotional pain, if we deny it or suppress it, we are cutting off important information we need for survival and for our sanity. And we do this so often. We live in societies all around the world that discourage expressions of tough emotions. When we start to cry, so often the first thing we do is apologize. And why are we apologizing for something so precious as sharing how we feel? I think it's because we're afraid to feel these feelings for a variety of reasons. So see if any of these resonate with you. I'm afraid if I let myself experience the pain, I'll never get out of it. People will think I'm crazy or will turn away from me if I tell them or show them how I really feel. I don't know how to fix this situation, so I don't have the right to be upset about it. I don't want to make other people feel bad, so I just keep these feelings to myself. If I express these feelings, I'll be attracting more of that energy to me, and I only want to think positive thoughts. This last sentiment I find particularly concerning because it implies that strong emotions are somehow negative, that our anger is negative, our grief is negative. But these feelings are neutral and they are necessary. Suppressing them causes emotional problems, including depression and PTSD. It can also cause physical illness. Emotions are not meant to be repressed or remain stuck. This English word emotion is based on the Latin word emovere, which means to move out. In other words, emotions need to be released. They need to move through us. So one of the ways to do this is honoring these feelings. What do I mean by honoring? We give them space for expression. We recognize their value in our lives, and we see the gifts they bring to us. It doesn't mean, however, that we get rid of them forever. As long as there are troubles in the world, these feelings will exist as well. But we learn how to live with them and be empowered by them, not defeated by them. So what happens when we honor our pain for the world and our own personal pain? We don't get stuck there. We actually can free up our ability to feel more deeply our love, our courage, and our joy. And we also realize that we are much more than our pain. We are not alone in our pain. Others feel it. We can feel more connected to others and to the world around us. And we can see that we're not responding just out of our personal fear or our personal pain, but that these are being felt around the world, and that we are connected to something larger than ourselves. And so when we feel that kind of connection, then we're being able to step into a larger call. And as facilitators, we truly need to embrace this understanding of the power of pain, of honoring our pain, and of letting these emotions move through us, and be willing to be vulnerable. We don't want to remain aloof, holding the space and not participating, not letting ourselves cry, not letting ourselves rage, not letting ourselves admit our hopelessness. The more genuine that we are in our feelings and how we are, the more permission we give to people in the ritual to do the same. So this is really important. We're going to talk about this ritual in person and online. Obviously, we're going to experience it online. But there's of course, a different setup for doing this in person and online. So if we're in, oh, sorry, and I do want to take the time. Helen did post in chat that we are going to ask you to identify whether or not you, oh good, people are starting to do this. So it would be helpful for us to know when we break up into smaller groups. If you facilitated the Truth Mandala, we'd like you to put a 1 in front of your name. If you've experienced the Truth Mandala, to put a 2 in front of your name. And if for some reason you don't want to participate in this ritual today, put an X in front of your name. And I really hope that, again, that you're willing to participate, that you cannot facilitate a ritual you haven't experienced. It's just, it doesn't work. So I really hope that everyone wants to participate in some way in the ritual. Okay. So just briefly, when we do this ritual in person, we create a very tight circle of people, either in chairs, on cushions, both. And we have an open space in the front. And we're going to bring the ritual objects into the center of the space in person. Now, traditionally, we've done this ritual with the objects on the floor, and people come and sit on the floor. But we have some, not everybody can sit on the floor. So you want to gauge that in person. And one solution that we've done is you may get a low table that the objects can be on, so they're easily accessible if somebody wants to sit on the floor and pick up the objects. And then also have a chair optional for people who may want to come in and sit on a chair and engage in with the objects. Okay, so be aware of people's mobility issues and flexibility issues, so that people feel comfortable accessing these objects wherever they are. When we do this online, as we did with you, we've invited people to have to bring their own objects with them so that they can interact with them in their space. Okay. This, so we want to talk about the intention of this ritual. And again, this would be something that you'd share with people as you're getting ready for the ritual. And this is, we're creating a space of truth speaking. This is a place for people to come and speak what is true for them about their pain for the world and their own personal pain. They're interconnected, right? So some people are going to come in with more issues about what's going on in their lives. Others will come in with issues that are bigger than themselves, and it's all welcome in this space. It is a space to speak your truth about how you feel. And we've invited in these beautiful objects to help us connect with different emotions. And so to be able to have the space and have people feel safe in this, the Truth Mandala has a lot of what I would call rules or guidelines that are essential to for this ritual to work well. The stronger your container for this workshop, the better your experience is going to be, and everyone else's experience is going to be. So I'm going to, again, I'm going to share some slides so we can see the different points that you would want to share with people as you are preparing this ritual. So we state the intention of the ritual, and then we're going to create some of the container for it. So in the Truth Mandala, we are sharing what's true for you. So we encourage I statements. I am feeling so overwhelmed because of the enormity of the impact of climate change in my community around the world. I'm feeling so angry so we want these all to be I statements, not you statements or we statements. Okay, this is about me, you, I statements. We encourage people to share the feelings, not the whole story. So we're not here to try and convince people of why I feel this way, or to get you to sign the petition, or to stop doing something, or to start doing something. We're simply talking about how I feel about it, and keeping with the emotion, not the detail of the story. So we invite them into this understanding that brevity is powerful. We don't have to go on and on and on. Plus, we also want to be aware of how many people are in our ritual, and we want to create space for everybody to have an opportunity to share if they would like. So wanting to encourage brevity. We want to encourage a number of ways for people to express themselves when they come into the Truth Mandala space. So verbally is the one that we often model and do, and most people do. They'll come in and they'll speak about how they feel. It's important that people are encouraged to speak in any language that they would like. We don't have to understand them to be able to support them. So any language is welcome in the space. People can come in and be in silence and be with each object, or stand and be witnessed, or step in online and be witnessed in silence. We encourage this online and in person. Movement can be a very powerful way of feeling. So people step in person and dance through the space. People have done that online, step back and move, with sound, without sound, with words, without words. Movement is wonderful. Straight out sounds, moans, ahs, whatever. People, they don't have to be words. They can just be sounds. It's all great. So we want to be able to encourage people to do any combination of these when they come into the space. We're going to introduce what each emotion goes with each object, but we encourage people. There's no right way to do it. You can engage with all four of them, with one of them, with two of them, whatever you're feeling is how you're drawn. There's no right way or particular order that people need to follow. I've invited people online the option of turning off their camera when they're sharing, if they're feeling self-conscious. Hard to do that in person. And not many people have done that, but it is an option for some people. It's important that people know that there is no requirement to come in to the Truth Mandala to share. We are being compassionate witnesses, holding space for each other in this work, and you have a profound experience being compassionate witness. So there's no requirement to come in. No one's going to be called on. We don't go around in a circle and now it's your turn. It's totally voluntary and as people feel called. Depending on the amount of time that you have and the number of people, you may want to let people come in more than once. That totally is based on your time availability and how many people choose to come in. It's important that everything that's shared in a truth mandala is held in confidence with confidentiality. We don't share it outside of the space. We don't necessarily talk about it outside of the space either, talking to somebody, oh, you know, you said something in the truth mandala. I'd like to talk to you about it. We try to discourage that, but if there is something that is pressing that you have share similar experience, you need to ask permission. Is it okay that I ask you? Would you be willing to talk about what you shared, and know that no is a perfectly good answer, and you don't need to do that. We want to hold everybody with compassion, with kindness, and curiosity. Everybody is coming to a truth mandala with a different experience of privilege, oppression, trauma, wounding, emotional issues, cultural issues, power issues, privilege issues, life experience. What is most alive for each one of us today coming into this truth mandala is going to be different. We don't have to agree with everybody on what is breaking their heart at the moment. We don't have to, again, convince somebody else that what is hard for us is hard for you. And I also like to add in here that we're not talking about everything that is of concern to us. We don't have the time. It's not possible. So if somebody mentions one thing, that doesn't mean that they don't value something else. And so it's important to realize that if somebody doesn't say something that is meaningful to you, doesn't mean that they don't support or find what you're saying as important as well. So everyone's going to bring something different into this space in the moment. And so we want to hold that with that kind of compassion, that kindness, that curiosity. And we as facilitators want to make sure that we let people know that anything, you know, whatever the issue is, whether it is about their personal situation, their a larger issue that they're involved in, whether it's environmental, whether it's social, whether it's political, whether it's about oppression and privilege and class, it's all welcome in this space. Okay, so we want to have that be really clear. And that then how we support each other after a sharing is by everybody saying, I hear you, or I'm with you. Online, I invite people to stay muted until somebody's done sharing, and then everybody unmutes and can say, I hear you, or I'm with you. In person, it's a different, you know, everyone can speak at pretty much at the same time, and we hear everybody at the same time. But that's how we share and support each other in this space. It's also important to say what's not allowed in this container, okay, to keep it safe. So we do not contradict someone else or refer to someone else's sharing. This is, again, all about how I feel. So we don't make reference, even if it's something that was meaningful to you that somebody else said, just stick with how you're feeling. So we don't bring anybody else is sharing or anybody else in the circle's name into the Truth Mandala. We don't lecture, we don't try to influence others. And we want to avoid the need to comfort others. In person, you know, especially if you're sitting close to another person, to reach out and put your arm around them or tap them on the knee or pass the box of tissues. what that does is, even though it may be coming from a place of concern, what it tells that other person in some way is that you're not okay with the feelings that they're feeling right now. You're trying to comfort them. It's okay. It's okay. And it can take somebody out of their experience. Online, we can comfort people by using emojis, right? And sending the heart or the hands, or sending a message in chat. So we don't want to do any of that. Again, it can take somebody out of their experience. And it also, on some level, can say, you know what, I'm just not really okay with you crying right now, or looking so angry, or whatever. Okay? How we support in this ritual, I hear you, I'm with you. Now, if somebody needs support and wants support, we encourage them to ask for it. In person, that may be, please pass me the Kleenex. When I start a ritual in person, I pass the Kleenex box around so people can take some Kleenex before we ever start the ritual. It's part of the prep. But then you have them available if people ask for them and want a tissue. Or if they want a hug and need a hug, they ask for it. We don't assume that we know what they need. And the same thing online, if somebody really needs to hear some support or whatever, they can put that in chat. But it's up to the person to ask for the help, not for us to assume that we know what they need. And really important, this is not a space to explain how you get out of feeling your pain or how you avoid these feelings. When I am feeling so overwhelmed, the thing that I do that I find is really helpful is that I just go out into the woods and I feel so much better. We have plenty of time to talk about how we get out of those feelings or why I don't feel that way. This is sacred, special time to be able to be in the feeling itself. So this is one time when I will step in if somebody is sharing and they're starting to talk about how they get out of, or why they don't feel this way, or what they do to get out of it. That's not what the space is for. We have plenty of time for that later. Okay. All right, I want to see if there are any questions about these instructions for our ritual and for offering this to other people. Yeah, Lydia.
Thank you. It was just the very last thing that you said about how I'm curious at how you would step in. What does that look like or sound like?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that as a facilitator, you need to think through for yourself about how you may step in if someone is really not maintaining the container as. And so I may simply just remind somebody, that we're staying with the emotion. Please stay with the feelings and that you're feeling right now, and not shift into that space. And then I'll, invite them to continue. Not anything gentle. So it would just be a matter of, if I was online, I would just start speaking. It's the same thing in person. I wouldn't necessarily come into the space, but I would ask them to come back and to stay with the emotion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Kathleen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. There's a question also in the chat. How do you go about stopping someone not being brief in a respect way?
Yeah, that is a challenge. And so so online, I may start to, I'll perhaps unmute and say, I hear you, I'm with you, and see if that invites them to shift into finishing. Some people have used timers, or like you could use a bell or a chime, and especially if you have a really set amount of time for your ritual, and you need to keep people moving, you might use a chime, or state that ahead of, up front, that if things tend to get long, you might use the chime or a drum, or so it's something that's not in verbal to give people a cue that maybe it's time to wrap up. And I would say you also use your discretion, because there are times when somebody needs the time, even though you're inviting people to be brief. But you can also give simple reminder. Another thing I would do is give a simple reminder. We don't need the full story. Please stay with your feeling. Because oftentimes if they're going on, it's because they're telling a story. Katie.
Thank you. My question was based on my own experience doing this ritual as a participant, not a facilitator. It was incredibly valuable, but it was also quite overwhelming and challenging at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And actually for some weeks afterward, I was processing a lot. And I'm curious if you talk ahead of time with participants about what they might feel, or what to expect afterwards, or offering people to kind of moderate how deep they go based on their self-knowledge of what they need that day. Are there any words you give ahead of time for folks who might be particularly sensitive or coming in with trauma histories or anything like that?
We will talk about doing a practice called breathing through, which helps for us to be present with emotions as they're coming up, and some somatic things that we can do in the moment to stay grounded. So we will do that. The reframing of the emotions that we'll do at the end, as far as the what's been strengthened in me, or the end of the Truth Mandala, where we talk about by going into your grief, you're creating more space for love. As we set that up and give people time to process that, that's very helpful in shifting them out. And then it's really important that you provide an opportunity for people to continued support. So if you're in the workshop, if people still need some time to process after the ritual is done, I make myself available, whether it's in the break or over lunch, to do that online. Same thing, I'll stay on after, and people can process and share. So you do want to be able to be available and have other people and maybe other people there as well to help support folks. I try not to let people go into what you're going to feel, because I have no idea.
Thank you.
Again, the stronger the container and setting that up, I really think helps people to regulate themselves. But also we want to make sure that we create space afterwards to support anybody. Okay, and I'm going to ask that if there are questions about the instruction going in, that's what I'd like to take now. These kinds of bigger questions, let's do after the ritual. If you've had experience facilitating, you have a question about it, we'll have plenty of time for that. But we want to make sure that we have time about, do you have questions about how we're holding the container and setting up the ritual? Okay. Yeah, Faye.
You kind of answered to a degree already, and I think what you just said means I should wait to the end. I just was going to ask, and you could perhaps explain later, what if there is someone that, even though you've made your container strong and you've done the preparing work in a way that they just become brokenhearted, and I was not the leader, but I was a participant, and one person revealed how much she felt like, and she just phrased it like leaving the world. Like I don't know if it was she felt in a safe place, but she I don't know how to say what I mean, but if it's so intense, to know how to help someone if that happens. But again, you could address that later. So thank you.
And that people having intense feelings and being able to express them in and of itself is not a problem. I mean, that's what we're creating a space for, is to be able to say what they may not be able to say anywhere else in any other space. So the question is, again, this in the speaking of it and being held, how is that person then transformed and changed? So for us to be find a way to hold the space for people while they are in the space of maybe sharing something that's incredibly difficult, that's a gift. Okay, to be able to be a witness for that and allow that person to share. Then how we support them afterwards, is really important, to be able to check in with them afterwards and say, how are you doing? And you may find that the fact that they've shared something intense like that may have been very healing for them, but it may not seem like it in the moment. Yeah, Michelle.
I might be working this out in my head, but I would love to hear your words as well. So my last experience of this, at the end, people said that was pretty full on. And it strikes me that there's not many places in our everyday life where we spend an hour, sometimes longer, with people expressing their emotions really full on in that time. So yeah, maybe just I'm wondering how you might flag that up front and again, use those words like precious, how important this is.
Yeah. So the framing, and so too, the framing that I did, with the PowerPoint is really, I think that also too is helpful. So the people, when they're coming in, they have again some reference for why it's important that we do this work, and that it's important that these feelings move through us. So that is part of setting the stage for the ritual and creating safe space for it, is to give that kind of context so people know that it's not just that there's a transformation that can happen. We're creating more space within us for our courage and our passion for justice and that sense of possibility.
And I'm guessing there's not many situations where people, or to say to people, you're going to hear a lot of discomfort. You don't have to fix it.
That's real, yes. And so
Yeah.
So why don't we so the practices that that are important to hold for this is the sense, first of all, of breathing through. Yes, so in talking about when we are in this space, and especially so many of us are energy sensitive, right? And so when we're with somebody who is really feeling something strong, we take it on, but we don't have to have it live in our bodies to be a compassionate witness. So compassion means to be with the suffering of another. It does not mean to suffer with them. And so as compassionate witnesses, the gift that we're giving is our presence and our support. I don't have to take on your grief. I have enough of my own. I can feel it initially and go, wow, but then I want to invite it to leave my body. And so one of the ways we can do this is with breathing through. And so the idea is that as we breathe in, someone's sharing, or I'm sharing myself, this can be a feeling I'm having, breathe it in. And then with my out breath, I'm just inviting it to move through me. Okay. And we'll see how it feels good for you. We can imagine it going and just leaving with our breath, our out breath. Some people like to imagine it moving through their heart, out through their heart. Now, we're not trying to change the emotions. So there is a beautiful practice called Tonglen, a Buddhist practice where you breathe in something that's difficult and then you breathe out love and light to change it. We're not doing that. We're just breathing it in. We're feeling it. Okay, that's good information. I'm letting it go. Letting it go. You might feel like you want to send it into the ground. See how it feels. But with the out breath, you're releasing it. In breath, you're getting good information. Wow, she's really angry. Let it go. Wow, she is in despair. Let it go. They are really struggling with this. Let it go. And it doesn't mean that you don't care. It simply means that we don't need to take on everybody else's feelings because we have enough of our own. And we want to be fully present for them. Another thing then is to be aware of how you are feeling in your own body. It's helpful for me sometimes to hug myself. Feels good. Just be aware of myself back in my body. Or a hand over my heart, hand over my solar plexus. Helps me again to be here in my body, but again, releasing, grounding, feeling my feet on the floor, my tush in the chair. It can be helpful to be observant in my space. Oh, there's the window, there's a lamp, there's the photo of my parents. That can be helpful. I'm a rock person, so having a stone in my hand, something that feels grounding, can help as well. So yes, so we want to offer that, and I offer that as preparation for this ritual, and then see if other people in the group have other ways that they find it helpful to stay present when we're hearing from so many people and feeling it for yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. There is a question in the chat. Yeah, about 3 elements of the Truth Mandala. You can see it, or you need me to read it out?
Oh, yeah. So the 3 things were the holding, the third. So it's holding and creating a strong container is really important. You as a facilitator, being able to honor your own pain, and the third is having a good way of transitioning people from the ritual and providing support after the ritual. Right. And so we're going to experience briefly a practice that you'll have access to, or that you should have had a link to already, called "What Has Been Strengthened in Me," that you're welcome to use. That is a beautiful way of helping people reframe what just happened in the Truth Mandala. Okay. Good. All right, so let me just check here and see if I've missed. Oh, so one other thing to mention before we go in from a facilitator point of view. Learn to be comfortable with silence. We're inviting people into a new experience. And not everybody is just going to be ready to come in. So oftentimes, especially online, I usually will be the first person to come in to the ritual. It also is a way then of being able to model for other people what it looks like. When we do this in person, oftentimes as we're placing and talking about the objects, you can actually do a kind of modeling of what it would look like in person as well. But once you've come in or somebody's come in, there might be some long silence while people are getting up the courage to come in. And it can be hard to sit there and just trust that people will come in when they're ready. Now, if you have a real time constraint, you may want to let people know we have so much time left, and that will also encourage people who have been waiting to come in. And Helen and I were both talking about this in preparation for this. We both had experiences where people did not choose to come in. And with Helen, she had a beautiful ritual of lovely silence where there was, I'm sure, still a lot that was going on with people. What I did, this was happened to me in an in-person workshop a number of years ago. And people weren't coming in, they weren't coming in. And so I read the room and just realized that somehow doing it this way was not comfortable for these people. So I did then just go around and say, why don't we go around the circle and each person say one thing that they're grieving. And they didn't have to do a story that, you know, just went around and you could pass if you wanted to. And that seemed to work. So then I just went through all four of the objects and people went in the circle and they each spoke about it. And somehow that group needed that kind of prompting. But there was a lot of silence before I tried that, you know, and that was then a way of bringing people in a way that they felt comfortable. So you'll learn that as you facilitate this, but there could very well be silences that we're gonna just hold the space for until somebody comes in. Yes, please.
Okay. Yes. How do you go about dealing with somebody who's breaking some of these rules? Let's say somebody starts to explain, etc. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the clearer that you can be in the instruction, the better. And there may be some, you know, there are people sometimes who come in and don't quite do it in the way that we would like. You want to have a lot of patience first. I mean, there are sometimes people, some people need to talk longer than others. And you'll get a sense, of that. But if someone is just really dominating the time, I may then unmute or step in and say, I hear you, I'm with you, as a way of giving them an indication, maybe it's time to wrap up, and come in that way. And if they just keep going on, then you want to then come in and say, thank you for your sharing. We'd like to create space for others. There'll be, and gently invite them into coming to a close. You don't want to step in prematurely. So some of this is about learning some patience and reading people, because some people, it is important that there's more, they need to share more. So you want to try to gauge that. But in general, I try not to interject if I don't need to. Okay. But the holding that space of, if people start talking about somebody else, or or going into why I don't feel this way, those are spaces where it's really important to step in right away, because those are that helps keep people emotionally safe. Okay, so I will just step in and remind us, we're not referring to anybody else. Can you stay with your feeling? All right, so for our ritual, as Helen said, we're going to record this up until I say the Truth Mandala is now open. So I'm going to do a little bit so I'm going to introduce the objects, as I would, but then once it starts, we will stop the recording. And this is important because confidentiality is vital to this ritual. Also, we don't want anyone being concerned about being recorded and what they were going to share. It can take us out of being present. So we're not recording any of the sharing. We'll record the what's been strengthened in me teaching when we all come back. So I would like for us to all we're going to start the ritual all together. We'll be in gallery view, and we're going to start together. And after about 3 or 4, maybe 3 shares, I would then you're going to be invited into breakout rooms, probably 7 to 8 people, so that everybody has an opportunity to share in the ritual. And we're going to try and have somebody who's experienced the ritual or facilitated it in each group. Not that you have to facilitate, because we'll just be a continuation of what I've started. But that way people all have an opportunity to share again if you would like. And then we'll close the ritual. We'll bring people back into the full room. I'll do how I would close the ritual and what's been strengthening me all together. Okay, so I want us all to have some shared experience with the ritual. Then you'll be invited gently into breakout rooms to continue the ritual. And we are in this space of about to move into ritual space, into the Truth Mandala. This is a space of truth speaking, where we each get to speak what is, or express what is true for us, and honoring our pain and our own personal pain. And we're grateful for these objects that we have here with us. And we're asking them to help us connect with our different emotions. And so our stone, our rock, helps us connect with our fear. Our dried leaves or crumpled paper help us connect to our grief. Our stick helps us connect to our righteous anger. And our empty bowl helps us connect to our not enoughness, our hopelessness, our not knowing what to do. So we're asking that these objects be with us, and we have access to those as we step in and engage with this process. Once we start in the ritual, I'm going to ask everybody to go on mute. If you want to come in to the space, unmute yourself and state your name, or I'd say I'd like to come in. Do your sharing. Then when you are finished, be able to let us know, thank you, I'm done, or mute. And then we can all come off of mute. Don't wait for each other, just come off of mute. I hear you, I'm with you. We're going to talk all over each other, it's okay. And then go back on mute. So I dedicate now this Truth Mandala to all the beings that are filling our hearts with love, with grief, all that is of concern to us, all that we care about, all that we hold precious and dear. This Truth Mandala is now open. Welcome you all back to, and thank you for your truth speaking, and for sharing and being compassionate witness. And even though this was a shorter time, to know that whether you were witness or sharing, that truth speaking is such a powerful gift. And to know that as you've been sharing and feeling, experiencing your fear, you are creating more space within you for your courage. And as you connect and feel your grief, you are creating more space within you for your love. And as you connect with this righteous anger, you are also creating more space within you for your passion for justice. And you're connecting with your hopelessness, your not enoughness, your not knowing. You are creating more space within you for possibility, for emergence, for magic, for the impossible. And so as we honor this transformation, this what is being opened up in us, as we bring this Truth Mandala to a close, I invite you now to take a moment in silence to ask yourself, what has been strengthened in you from having been in this space of truth speaking? What is one thing that has been strengthened in you? And I'm just going to play music for a brief time. Normally I would play it for longer, but we're just going to have a taste of this practice of being able to ask yourself, what has been strengthened in you? And if you would take a moment now in chat to write the one thing that has been strengthened in you. Trust in the collective, courage, my voice, connection, common passion, community, step forward and share perspective, more space for compassion, being with, knowledge that I'm not alone, commitment, strong heart, courage to speak, being myself, feeling the pain of others, I'm not alone, courage to seek creativity versus violence, acceptance of the truth, togetherness, community, compassion, communal love for the world, inner knowing, ability to listen, connection to community, passion for life, hear testimony without judgment, courage, hard things. So taking a breath, and this is powerful work, and I know half of you have never done this ritual before, and so I'm sorry that we've had to do this in a condensed time frame. We wanted to allow some space now for reflection, for questions, for comments going forward. And with this particular practice, I usually play music for a good 5 minutes if it's online. If it's in person, longer, and creating space for people to dance. I may have paper out for people to draw, give people time to be outside so in person, I'll allow more time for this processing. And then coming back, then we actually share in the group one thing that's been strengthened in me, and go around so that we can hear from everybody. Doing the chat when it's really short amount of time is helpful. But this is one way of, again, bringing and making a transition and being able to see what has been changed in somebody. We don't want to just end a truth mandala and be done. This is too powerful a work. We need some kind of transitioning, and then opportunity to share, to talk about it, however you want to do it. But there really needs to be that processing and transition time. So So now would like, in the time that we have remaining, for additional questions and or reflections on your experience. So we have a question here. When I participated in this ritual years ago, I remember the other side of the objects, love, justice, etc., were first named at the end. In reading some of the instructions from preparing for this time, I've seen folks share both sides at the beginning. So in the process of setting the context in the teaching for this ritual, you know, I made mention of the opposite sides of the feelings. I think it works well. It can work well in the beginning to let people know that that's, you know, what we're stepping when we're stepping into the you know the partner emotion. I don't know that it's necessary to do it if you've done a good framing of the ritual with a teaching piece. And I'm curious, Lydia, did you have a preference? I guess you've experienced it, so you know the other side of things, but you may want to ask yourself, how did it feel good to know it ahead of time, or was it helpful to just be in the feelings and then have the reflection afterwards? I don't think there's a right way to do that per se.
Did you want me to answer that, or just it was a rhetorical question?
No,
I can leave it as a rhetorical
go
question.
ahead
There's
and
so many
answer.
other questions, so
Yeah.
that's fine.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yes, Erica.
Hi, thanks. I have a tech question and a facilitation question. So one is, I'll just do them both and then you can answer them because the tech question is very small. How did you get the bell to ring on Zoom? That is not a straightforward deal. And then the other question is, it's a little scary being in there in the sense of what if the thing I'm passionate about really upsets somebody else? So say you were in a room where somebody was passionate about the opposite side of a view than another person. Is a skillful facilitator might be able to just say, yep, these feel like I hear you is the framework, but can that ever be an issue, or how do you handle it? Like as a facilitator, I could see me feeling like this inside, like, oh, fuck. So I'm just curious what your suggestions are without the F-bomb.
Yes. F-bomb's good too. So the key for playing a bell, playing a drum, singing online is that you want to change the setting. So in your upper left-hand corner, you should see the words original. Well, you have to turn this on in your settings. Original sound for musicians is one of your settings in Zoom, and you want to turn it on. And what that does is it gets rid of all the background filters, and then you can hear the bell beautifully. So that's key for that. And again, in the setup for the ritual, to be able to state we're not, you don't have to all agree on what is being shared. We're all coming in with our different points of view, our different issues. It's really important to state that at the beginning of the ritual as part of the instruction, that we're not all going to agree, and that's not the point. The point here is to support each other in our feelings. And that's also why it's really good not to go too much into a story, but to encourage people to stay with their feelings. And that's also important. Then that's another reason why the guideline is there of you don't refer to what somebody else has said in the Truth Mandala. And
Wonderful.
Yep. And as a facilitator, that is a space to step in again. If somebody is not paying it, again, just be able to step and say, hey, we're not, we agreed not to refer, blah, 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 and just then step back out.
Okay, great framing. And I'm sorry I don't know this, but did you already provide time minimums in other documentation about the minimum time you'd need to do an online version or an in-person version?
No, well, I didn't talk about that. And that, again, that varies from how long you're going to be doing. If you have a day-long workshop, do you have a the truth? Well, so this is an important thing. So the Truth Mandala does, this was too short, clearly, a time for a Truth Mandala. And so if you're going to do it, make sure that you do have enough time to do the ritual. And I would say an hour is a bare minimum, again, with a small number of people. Okay, so like 12 people or something like that, or more. So if you don't have the time to devote to this ritual, there are other rituals like the Cairn of Mourning is a beautiful ritual that you can do with a large group in a shorter amount of time that allows people to get in touch with this. The Truth Mandala really does need time. And so I would say, just as a basic ballpark, an hour minimum would be good. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kathleen. This was brilliant. I'm curious, do you suggest that the facilitator always go first, kind of in modeling and maybe also being willing to go deep? So that's my first question. And then my second question is around whether the Truth Mandala is really just for this context, because for instance, like I'm in different groups and I could actually see this working for like kind of a clearing within a conflict. And I'm just wondering if within the Work That Reconnects, if it's really kind of like wanting to honor the process, and it's like, is this really recommended just for this type of work, or could it be kind of adapted to almost do like a clearing of a conflict and bringing those emotions in? Thank you.
Great, thank you. And so I was so focused on your second part. Your first part of your question was,
does the facilitator always go first?
Go first. Thank you. So I've found in particular online, and online I usually have a shorter amount of time than in person. So I've been tending to go in first, because that also then gives me an opportunity to model what it looks like. So in a short, when you have a short amount of time, it can be helpful. Plus, it also, I do think that it's helpful to be able to, as vulnerable as you can be, you're giving the people in the circle the opportunity to do that as well. And to not be afraid to cry, or to show real emotion. It's I cry at everything, so it's easy for me to. I mean, that comes up for me a lot, and people's reaction to it in a workshop is one where then they're given permission as well, and so that's important. If you're doing this in a group where there are people who've experienced it before, often someone else is going to step in. And if things seem to be moving along easily, and I want, again, make sure that there's time for everyone, sometimes I don't go in at all. Again, so you can judge that. This can be adapted. And with that idea of wanting to, when we do this in honoring our pain work in the Work That Reconnects, the Work That Reconnects is all 4 stages of the spiral. And so we're stepping into this work having already done gratitude work, and knowing that we're going to be going into seeing with new and ancient eyes. And so if we do the grief piece kind of as a separate thing, or adapt it in some way, I would do some kind of gratitude. And if you're resolving conflict, the gratitude is great. And again, having some processing. So wanting to always hold it grounded in gratitude, and having some sort of transition into seeing with new eyes in some way. And the strengthening process is that. So yeah, great, thank you.
Hi, Kathleen. It's so nice to see you. Thank you. That was all really helpful. I have 2 questions. The first one directly relates to what you just said. I'm wondering about what would be the minimum you would put beforehand, in the gratitude and maybe presenting, breathing through. How long would you need in terms of workshop hours before you would come to the Truth Mandala? That's my first question.
Mhm.
I'm trying to design a 3-day, and I'm wondering where, at what point is the group going to have the safety and comfort where it would be good to bring the Truth Mandala in? And
Mhm.
my second question is, I've had the good fortune to do 3 grief rituals inspired by the teachings of Francis Weller recently. And I found them very powerful. I really liked how nonverbal they are, how there's a little extended time because people are simultaneously expressing. And I found the 5 gates of grief very helpful. And part of me wants to do that instead of the Truth Mandala. But then I'm thinking, well, I shouldn't be mixing things up, and I should just stick with the work that reconnects if I'm going to do the work that reconnects. I'd be curious about your views and any experience you have with that.
Yeah. There are a number of rituals, within the Work That Reconnects toolkit, for honoring our pain. And so, the bowl of tears is a beautiful ritual that allows for multiple stations and people moving at the same time, and being verbal or nonverbal. So there are a variety of rituals that are available through this, but that's also not to say that taking Francis Weller's work is great, and to see adapting his ritual into this context. I would say, yeah, give it a try and see how it works, see how it feels. So you're still holding the same as long as it's in the same construct of of the spiral. I think it would be great to try it and see how it works. And the first question
Was
again,
about what would be the
timing.
minimum that would need to precede it,
You're right.
your design?
If you were doing a full 3 days, um,
Yeah, or 3 days, but there might be, because it's a bit longer than the 2, there might be more space for being outside and
right.
making it more of a retreat feel, a little less intense than a workshop.
Right. I would think that if you did it like starting on the second day, so you get all your first day stuff, building your container, gratitude, what's the work that reconnects, all of that, and then come in the morning like doing a milling, and getting and so that you would build and do the teaching piece on honoring our pain, have and work your way into the Truth Mandala or your whatever ritual you're doing. But then it's just important that in where you're putting this in the workshop, that that again, that transition space where people are done with the ritual, you've done some transitioning, you're creating support for people. What's the length of time between then moving into seeing with new and ancient eyes? And then so if it's like at the end of the day, is there something, if you're in a retreat, it's great because then you could have the evening for support and doing some other processes to help people transition. When it's hard doing it online, and so, okay, here's the Truth Mandala section. That's why it's really wanting to make sure that people have some ability to be supported in between times is really important. That good? Okay, great, thanks.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So Kathleen, you've coached me a little bit on this ritual before, and sticking point for me is the tension between shallow versus deep, and allowing people to just say what they want to say versus kind of interrupting and coaching them in a way that isn't shutting them down and control them. And I think this was a particularly challenging one here because this is a teaching demo, and so we're more in our heads than we would be if it weren't, right? And I found in my small group that I didn't really count, but I think really everybody was describing feelings. In my view, what I heard was describing versus expressing feelings. So talking about feelings. I'm so angry that blah, 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 because blah, blah, blah. A lot of explaining. And that's what we all do. And then I said, well, I'm going to stay out of that. I'm going to stay out of story. And then I fell into story. Like I'm there too. So, and in my view, or the assumption is unless this touches people and moves energy in them beyond the verbal linear thinking, it's not really doing much except saying, yeah, we all agree it's terrible. And so I love the idea of the one participant who said, let's try something nonverbal, and let's have people think of something that they feel really deeply about and make a gesture about it, and let that gesture express it. Do it privately, and then exaggerate that gesture, and then have them come back, something to get people into their bodies and out of their heads. So that was my experience. Other people might have had a different experience, and I wonder what you think.
I think it's one, we all process or experience feelings differently. And so we're making a bit of a judgment in saying, because I'm using words to say how I feel, that I'm not somehow feeling them. So is somebody pounding pillows, that may be really good for somebody, and being able to just actually be able to say, I am so fucking mad, is what they need. So we all experience our emotions differently. And so to say that just because we're talking about it means we're not feeling it, I'm not sure that that's quite accurate. Are there ways of going deeper? Absolutely. Being able to be more in our bodies and or with sound. Absolutely. You have to have some experience is better than no experience. And seeing and that's why it is great to be able to have the space for people to be able to try different things, to see how it works for you. But for some people, even just saying anything is really is powerful. So, and if you have more time, people can go deeper. So there is, it's not going to provide this, I guess, the same experience for everybody. But I just would be careful about feeling that because people were talking that they weren't really feeling.
Well, that's the risk of invalidating people by saying, please stay with your feelings, not your story. And that can seem very judgmental and dismissive. And by the way, I don't think that words are the problem. Is energy moving or not? And maybe it is moving for them, but if I can't feel it in me, if I'm not touched, and if others aren't touched, maybe not. So I hear you, and it's not quite satisfying, but maybe that's the way it is.
And there are and yes, people can be in their head and get to a certain level, and again, how much time you have is going to also change the experience too. This was very rushed and and teaching, so I think it's a little bit different. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathleen. It's 3 minutes past the hour now. We still have people raising hands, and we have a couple of questions in the chat. How would you like to?
Okay.
What would you like to do?
I am happy to stay on for as long as people have questions, if you are as well. So why don't we take a question from the chat?
Okay.
And
Okay, there's this question. I think in the beginning it was asked. Breathing through, are we supposed to not feel grief, fear, anger, hopelessness after we breathe out people's pain?
the idea is that you're not holding on to what you've just witnessed. So you're feeling it as you breathe it in. I'm feeling his frustration, but I'm not going to let it, I'm not going to be frustrated because he's feeling frustrated. I'm breathing in her grief and I'm feeling it. But I'm going to release her grief. I still have my own grief, if that's helpful. I mean, it's not trying to shut down how you're feeling. It's just that I'm not going to, you don't want to necessarily feel like you have to take on everyone else's feelings in addition to how you're feeling. It's going to impact you and you're going to own your feeling, but I'm going to release their energy around it.
Right. And there's this other question in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you would step in as facilitator if people are expressing positive feelings, joy, hope.
That was, one of the real strong points that I make is that this is not a space for that. That we don't come in to talk about what we love or what brings us joy. This is a sacred space for the crunchy emotions, the tough emotions, not their partner emotions.
Thank you, Kathleen. I had a question about the completion of the process when everyone shared. You mentioned allowing space for that integration or the continuation of allowing that to pass through. And you mentioned leaving the circle and going outside or drawing or whatever. Does that not in some way interrupt the sacredness or the container? And how do you get them back?
So there's a set amount of time. So if we're doing this in person, so if it's in person, I'm playing the music. People can hear the music. So if they go outside, it's not to go wander away because it's going to be like 10 minutes or, so they know it's a set amount of time. And then we're coming back into circle. And they're also invited to be in silence. So the silence is really important for keeping the energy in the container. But the idea is that you're in reflective space and you're coming back to share.
Perfect. Thank you.
And online, I don't invite people to do anything other than be in the space.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Whoops.
Actually, sorry, you pretty much just answered my question. I was going to ask the same thing about in person, just because when I facilitate things, I try to be really conscientious about an awareness of we're coming into sacred space and now we're leaving sacred space. And so I just wondered about in that time of silence, departing the sacred space without making any honoring of that, but you basically just answered that. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
And there's a new question in the chat. Okay. Any tips for doing this hybrid with some in person and some online?
Well, again, I guess it would depend on how many people you have and how your setup is for being able to see the people online. Probably the easiest thing is to do all of the teaching, open up the ritual with everybody there, and then maybe have the people who are online be in a breakout room to do it all online, and the people who are live do it live. And then bring everybody back to do your closing piece, just like we did here. But have your in-person people do the ritual and your online people do the ritual would be my first thought. And it would be challenging, I think.
So I have a question about the support statements. I've been in a ritual where we could say them during someone's share, like as they were sharing, I hear you, I see you, I'm with you. And then I've also been in a ritual where we sing the song after the whole thing's done, like I see you, I see you, I see you, I hear you, I hear you, I hear you. And just wondering like and any sense of what's better or works or
culturally, I would say probably culturally there are differences, and probably age-wise too, as far as people's what feels comfortable, acknowledging people, whether it's at the end of a share or in the middle of a share. And so I would say part of that I think is your comfort level and the culture that you're in. So for me and my culture, it feels disruptive to me. But in other cultures, there's the continual sharing throughout. So there's no hard and fast. I say read your group. The song is wow, lovely. I would love to if you have a recording of that or something that you could share and send to us, that would be great. So any kind of thing that we bring in like that is really wonderful.
Yeah.
Just in general, that I forgot to is that it's also important with honoring our pain rituals that even after the transition period, that that people have access to ongoing support. So I always say that I'm available if people still need to process after a ritual. If it's online, I stay on afterwards if people need to still process and talk, or email me later. And in person, same thing, always creating space and opportunity for if anyone is still in the throes of it and needs some additional processing, that you're available, or somebody as part of your workshop space is available to offer continued support that day or the week after, is really important.
So my question is kind of along those same lines. I'm thinking about the mental health issues and in leading this with a group of people that you may not know. Do you do any sort of vetting, or can you talk about how you might, I don't know, work with someone or, that might be facing that, or how you identify that, or, some questions around that?
I have not done any, vetting ahead of time as far as an application process or whatnot. I think that to be aware and to, if at all possible, being able to read people, is important. I would say, where I've found that it's important is afterwards, people, needing some support. Sometimes people will say, I'm not, again, creating space where people don't have to come into the ritual creates some kind of protection, safety, but people also have the option to not participate. And so it's always important with any of these rituals that participation is voluntary. And so if this is really too hard for somebody, they don't need to participate in that way. And you may ask, if in some of the other work that you're doing leading up to the Truth Mandala, with people sharing, you may ask if there are people who feel that this would be particularly challenging for them, and what kind of, is there added support that they would need? So when I go through the breathing through and the somatic exercises, I will then often ask, does anybody else have something that they would like to share with a group that you find helpful for being present? And so if someone's really going to have a hard time with it, they often, in my experience with it, is that they'll identify, and but we also need to be really tuned into the support afterwards if they need it. Zana.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your very clear teaching, Kathleen. And my question concerns the very word ritual. You explained very clearly at the beginning that it's a
it's a space kind of out of time for us to be in. But I'd love to understand more deeply the difference between ritual and ceremony. I think for practices, it's clear for me, but, can you comment on that?
I've asked myself that question too, like, what is there a real difference between ritual and ceremony? And ritual, they're both spaces of transformation. And I don't know that there's a real strong distinction. People have, ritual can be something that is repetitive. I mean, that you always do, like saying grace before eating is a ritual. And so ritual, ceremony, I guess, is more, actually, I really don't know that there's a strong enough difference to make one. I would use those words interchangeably, but I think ritual, we have personal rituals. I don't know, I would use that word more for personal ritual than I would say I have a personal ceremony. Ceremony to me involves more people, but it's semantics. I don't think it's, as far as how we're inducting people into a ceremony or a ritual, I would use those words interchangeably for this purpose. So thanks.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for taking my question. I was going to use the word ceremony in my question, actually. So I'm in a medicine wheel. So we have ceremonies for Northeast Southwest as part of the medicine wheel. And interestingly enough, I think about the things that we do in the ceremony as rituals. So for honoring the North, we're going to do this ritual. Anyway, I wonder what your reaction is to after people spoke. I have had, through ceremony, I use Speaks for Me as a confirmation. And I wonder what your reaction is. I used that actually just second nature in my group. When they were done, I would say, I hear you or I see you. But a couple of times I said, Speaks for Me. And I wonder what your reaction is to that, because I can feel where it might detract from the speaker. I wonder what you think.
Just my initial reaction is it's about you.
Yeah.
Speaks for me. And as compassionate witness, we're here to support the other person. So it doesn't have the same direction of intention for me.
Yep. Thank you. That was my sense too. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth.
Hello. I was at a grief, a Truth Mandala, and I got the sense afterwards that everybody had a lot of grief to process. And so anyway, I wonder how to do that.
I'm not sure I understand. You mean that after the ritual, there was still a lot that hadn't been processed?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
And I could feel it. And, I wasn't the facilitator. So anyway, that was, anyway.
And was it a part of a longer workshop? And so was there time? Was there time within the workshop where there may have been able to do some more ritual, to do some more work and sharing?
Yes. And I still, there were a couple of people that I felt really strongly that I asked if it was okay to talk to them, because it was, what they shared was so, that, and they appreciated that.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
yeah,
it's just something that I'm noting.
Yes, and I think that it's great for us to hear that. And so as a participant in a workshop, if we're noticing that, to then go to the facilitator and say, I'm noticing that there's some people who are still in process. It's always great to give some guidance, or give more information to the facilitator if you're noticing something in a workshop space, to say, hey, I think people need some more process work. And then I would hope that as a facilitator, then we would step in and want to be flexible and say, okay, we need to do more here. And maybe take some time away from moving into seeing with new and ancient eyes until we did some more work there. And yeah, so the more feedback facilitators get for that, then we can make adjustments. But I think it's really important to be able to hold that in a good way. So yeah, thanks, Beth.
Yeah.
Yes. Does that help?
I have facilitated short workshops going through the whole spiral several times, 2, 3, 4 hours, but not the Truth Mandala, of course, in so short time. But I've experienced it on a weekend, on 2 weekend workshops, and I find it's extremely strong. And I have a question that is, for me, it has been a kind of peak experience, these weekend workshops, really very intense feeling of not being alone, yeah, belonging and so on. But to me, it was peak experiences, and then I'm back in my everyday life. Of course, I have some people that groups I'm joining and so on. But to create this space, I really feel it. I need an everyday daily life ritual to create space for our grief too in daily life more. Also, when we are working with the strikes and blockades and so on. Mm-hmm. Also in simple daily life, when you hear the news, it's.
So so how do you, is there a way to go through the spiral quickly on a daily basis? And yes, I mean, you can do that. And two, that very question of how do we support ourselves after we've been through a workshop experience motivated me. I've recorded a 45-minute guided self-practice of the Work That Reconnects that takes you through the spiral, creates space for you to respond and to react. It's not just me talking the whole time. There's space, there's music, and there's some guided imagery. And so it is a way of taking you through the spiral and letting whatever is coming up for you be able to express it, in that time. So that is one option for ongoing support for this work. And then two, the more we're doing, I offer this online. A lot of people are doing this online as well. It's a 5-part series to continue to have more experience and support, I think is great. And then the Work That Reconnects network itself, encouraging everybody to become a member of that. And there are opportunities there too for building community and not feeling so alone in this process. So, yeah. But so to be able to just go through the spiral, noticing, wow, this is what I'm grateful for. This is how I'm feeling about this particular issue. How are you seeing it differently or through a different lens, through seeing with new and ancient eyes? And then what's my going forth for today? And it may, simply be being present and noticing how I feel. But that is the power of the spiral.
Yes, thank you, Kathleen. I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about the transition from the so-called crunchy emotions. So I'm thinking here of things like fear and how that can often from that courage can arise. And I'm just wondering, in terms of the spiral, is that something we are trying to facilitate, that people see the kind of counterpart emotion, so to speak, or does it just arise of its own accord?
guiding people into the partner emotions is a key piece to the Truth Mandala. So we don't, that is part of the closing piece. Some people will identify the partner emotions as preparation for going into the Truth Mandala. I tend to do a little bit of that in the teaching piece as I did, but I don't draw the parallels until the end of the ritual. Again, because wanting to keep people focused on the crunchy emotions, but then I think it's vital. That is part of the transformation of this ritual, is to then say, this is what is happening because they have moved through you. So doing the partner emotions is essential for this ritual.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Julia.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, because it's a very high intensity workshop, and it's also kind of the levels of vulnerability that people ordinarily are not used to, don't expect. So I think my question is a little bit about like settings where you would and wouldn't do it. Like, for example, if I'm running like a retreat day or a workshop day with an organization that's had some problems and issues, or if it's around like a conflict coaching skills workshop, but people who haven't really done this kind of practice, and also ritual might be something they're not really familiar with. So my question is settings and also signaling, how to then help people self-select if they want to take part in this.
To take part in a Work That Reconnects workshop?
No, in the Truth Mandala. So to help people, what language do you use to suggest that this might be something out of ordinary, for the lack of better words?
Well, it's not the Truth Mandala isn't a standalone practice, and we're teaching it here, focusing on that. But anytime you offer the Truth Mandala or any honoring our pain work, it's important to do gratitude, to ground people in that, in that space. And again, have some context for why are we doing this honoring our pain work, and having, again, that kind of transition out of that space. So, are there settings where you wouldn't do it? I mean, they're probably yes. Again, one is wanting to make sure that you have enough time to do it and to build the container, of trust, and or so that you're having some time together. I have done a Truth Mandala in a day-long workshop. Again, smaller groups, for a day long. But if you're doing this with a group of people who work together, again, it could be very powerful for them to hear, but you're setting the container, the ground rules is essential, and being able to hold those. So making sure everyone's in agreement before they would go into that kind of ritual space is important. And so, yeah, I think it's really a matter of, do you have the amount of time to do all that you need to do to prepare for it and to support them on either end of the ritual. And there are, for larger groups, the Cairn of Mourning is a wonderful ritual that people still get an opportunity to speak, and you can do the Cairn in a variety of ways. If you don't have the ability to actually build something, I've done it with people writing things down on paper and putting the paper in a basket. So there are other ways of working with large groups of people in a shorter amount of time to honor pain. Truth Mandala is really one where I would say you need to feel that you can do it well with the number of people you have in the amount of time that you have. It's a general, but yeah.
I just had a quick question. If, say, you had an hour and a half to do a ritual, could you generally talk about how you would break down the introduction and how much time for ritual and how much time for integration? Or if you had 2 hours, I mean, what would be your ideal if you were working with a group and you had an hour and a half to 2 hours?
To do the whole spiral, or
to do the ritual.
oh, this piece.
This piece, yeah.
This piece.
Mhm.
So say if in again, depends on the number of people. So let's say if you're going to be doing a group of 12, you know, so if you have a group of 12, yeah, I would dedicate at least if of your 2 hours worth of at least an hour for the ritual, for the ritual, and then whatever support that transition piece afterwards, group share and closing, so that you know, that you have an hour-ish. I mean, again, to doing the teaching piece, going through all of the instruction. I mean, so in that first hour is all the instruction as well. So that I would say then you could have an hour of ritual, closing the ritual, doing your integration piece, and the what's been strengthened in me. That piece I'd like to at least give, you know, 6 minutes to, if I'm doing it online. If it's in person, you know, 10 minutes or so, allowing people to get up and move. So some people, like with the music on, like to move and dance. I have papers out so people can draw or write. Some people like to sit in silence. And then you come back and do a group share on what has been strengthened in me. So that integration piece we just did, you know, so short here. So that would all be part of that hour as an estimate.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura.
Yeah, I guess I'm surprised to hear a whole hour at the beginning, but I think depending on the group, if people aren't experienced or they have never been here. So yeah, and really clarifying for people, and then also modeling what the emotions are a little bit and stuff like that. It goes fast. Yeah. Have you done standalone truth mandalas that, like, people are just coming for a truth mandala?
No. I haven't. I mean, there are, you know, Frances Weller does these beautiful grief rituals. And if you're going to do an honoring a pain ritual as a standalone, it's still, I think, essential that there is some kind of gratitude grounding.
Yeah.
And transition processing time.
Definitely.
You know.
Yeah, he uses a lot of journaling. Yeah, I have done online truth mandalas. It was just a truth mandala. You know, it was just with a few, you know, I don't remember, 8, no more than 10 people.
Yeah.
But I think most of the people were experienced based off the list that it came from. So
yes, and I think that's, yeah. So again, read your audience.
Right.
There is yeah, the work that reconnects is a 4-step process, and it's a 4-step process for a reason. And so there is more that I think that the grief work, or the honoring our pain work, gets reframed and supported when we go through the rest of the spiral.
Right. Right.
Do it. You
That
know,
makes sense.
so it's an and, I think, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hannah.
I had a question about when you're modeling as the facilitator, because I think, well, just my natural, authentic way of interacting with this ritual is to be very emotive. That's just how I express grief. Some feedback I got after facilitating was that someone didn't feel comfortable to go in because the way that they would express is not that. And so and I know I heard you mention something that is important to mention before you go into it, is that there are different ways, but it's different to say that versus to experience it. And so I almost wonder if it would be helpful to, like, have that other way of engaging be modeled as well.
As far as you're coming in silence or movement, and yeah, and especially if you're when we're in person, you know, to model movement is really, you know, is good, you know, to be able to just really move around the space and show that to people. You could do it somewhat in, you know, online as well. It, you know, you do your best to let people know ahead of time. And I don't know that I really did this specifically as a part of the guidance, to say that we all experience and show our emotions differently. And so the fact that somebody comes in and doesn't shed a tear doesn't mean that they're not sad. And somebody who cries a lot, their grief isn't any stronger than the other person's grief. And some people are going to be very emotive and others are going to be really still and silent, and it's all powerful and there's no right way. So especially if you know that you in particular are very emotive, and you're sort of reading your group, you may choose to not be as authentic, you know, or at least as in the beginning, and or make it really clear, and maybe even say that and say, I am a very emotive, you know, when I experience it, this is how it is for me. But it's important that we realize that that's not the only way to do it. And that, and you know, and really talk it and own that, talk about it beforehand, so that you're giving people permission to come in as they need to. Yeah. Nikki.
Hi, yeah, I was wondering, as we were doing it, and this is my first time participating in the Truth Mandala, that I was kind of thinking about the idea of just space and that how that kind of creates a sense of safety or not. And you had mentioned about, you know, when the mandala and the objects were in the middle of the room and people were invited to go up, you know, to be witnessed in this ritual, that, you know, there was a sense during one of the sessions that people were kind of, you know, maybe there was a fear of being seen, or it was just like leaving the comfort of, I think, just sitting where you are to do something like that. So it made me think that, like, I feel like I could see that happening more often than not, just in the sense of like, even just being like comfortable where you're at and not feeling like maybe you had a big enough of something to share to go. So would it ever be, would you say, like, if you kind of have that sense or that feeling even right off the bat, just to really, you know, have these objects in your hand and, you know, offering it as you did, you know, when you noticed it, but just even right from the very get-go to say, we're going to be passing these objects along and this is what it means and you can use it or not, just to do that from the beginning?
I would not. That's happened to me only once in the many years that I have facilitated this. So it's at least in my experience, it has been the exception rather than the rule. People, you know, tend to move into the space and, you know, and share. I would, you know, have it as an option, you know, given, because every group's different. But don't sell them short, because you're afraid that they might not come in. Again, the more that we hold that confident space and invite them in, but know that you always have options in case
Okay.
they don't.
Well, and then my second question just is, I just want to really get a clear understanding of what it looks like. So you said a tight container. Does that mean like people should really be like knees, like let's say they're on the floor and they're sitting crisscross, you know, applesauce or whatever. So would you actually be like knees touching, like that's how tight it needs to be? And then when someone is ready to go and grab their items, it's really only just like a few feet away? Or, I mean, I guess it depends on the size of the circle, but is it meant to be like super tight where it's almost like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, no, they don't have to be knees touching, but you don't want to have, you know, 2 feet of space in between everybody, and they're all spread out, you know. So, and depending, you know, sometimes you'll have 2 rows worth where some people are in chairs and some are in cushions, but you just want to get a sense of being held in the circle, you know, having 5 feet, you know, 5 feet, 6 feet in open space is nice. And you get a sense of when you come in, how does it feel to come in? You don't want to, but you don't want to feel like you're on top of everybody. You know, you want some space to be witnessed, but you just don't want people spread out and there's big space in between chairs.
Okay, thank you.
welcome.
Agathe.
Agathe. Hi, Agathe.
Hi. I have a funny question. It feels to me that, you were saying that it's important that there's some time for gratitude, for a ritual of gratitude, not to just leave people, with this really sort of moving kind of experience. And I'm wondering if, like, say, you were doing like a truth mandala and a gratitude rituals together. How long would you allot to that? How long would you need? Because the reason why I'm asking is because I think this is a great exercise, a great practice to learn how to hold polarities, learn how to hold the grief, the sadness, the anger, and also the joy of being alive, and the love and the action and all that. And so, combining the two would be really, it seems would be really powerful. So how long would you need for that during the two?
So are you taking this out of not doing it as part of a Work That Reconnects spiral?
Yeah, I would take it as a little module where we're learning how to hold polarities, to be at once with our sadness, and also with our joy, with our anger, and also with our capacity to act, and maybe that's taking things out of context, but I think this is really powerful. And because to me it feels like this is what I need to learn, is because this is how the world is.
Yes. So, and I would say that is the process of the Work That Reconnects. That, you're starting in gratitude, and having that filter that of gratitude. What can we be grateful for? We're then being able to hold that space of when we're in what we love. Then it's what happens when our heart breaks, and that's the honoring of our pain. The process of honoring our pain opens us up to our love, our courage, our capacity for justice, which then allows us to see that we're all interconnected, which moves us into the seeing with new and ancient eyes about all the different ways that we are connected and participate in change, which then leads into the going forth. So that process does, you're in that space of the polarity. So I think it's built into the process of the Work That Reconnects, and then, but also being able to, as you're saying, that's an important skill set to have. It's an and, it's we're in gratitude and we're grieving, and it's an and. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And well, thank you all for being here and for your participation and questions. And I really hope that you have an opportunity to experience this in its fullness, and not in this sort of rushed space. And thank you, Helen, for all of the good tech support. So, and
thank you for joining us today. To learn more about the Work That Reconnects .org, we welcome you to become a community member of the Work That Reconnects network. Visit workthatreconnects.org, community member registration, for more information.